Buttwink is causing you to be weak. What do I mean by that? So Buttwink is a concept that I'm sure if you have perused the internet looking for strength and conditioning information, you have come across. Now, there's a few schools of thought when it comes to Buttwink. There are some people that think it's gonna kill you, or it's gonna absolutely ruin your gains, and it's gonna hurt you indefinitely forever if you have it once. There are people that don't think anything about it, that think it's a naturally occurring thing, and that don't really worry about it. I sit right in the middle, just like with most things. Do I think it could be potentially harmful? Absolutely. Do I think that it is potentially harmful in everybody? Absolutely not. But the fact of the matter is, it is a situation that arises if you are a competitive powerlifter. At the end of the day, it's an energy leak, and at the end of the day, it's a potential weakness that could, if not really thought about or not really taken into consideration, could potentially end in an injury, and that's not what we want to do. So again, I'm not here to scare you. I'm not here to put you in a position where you have to fix this or else you're going to die. I just want to educate you on the occurrence of Buttwink when it comes to squatting, why it happens, and some of the things that we can do to correct it. So there's going to be two sections to this video. Section 1 is going to be talking about quick fixes. This is going to be focused more in on coaches or trainers or athletes that are interested in just kind of correcting the problem with a Band-Aid solution for the time being as they correct it long-term later on. That leads into section 2, the long-term fixes, the things that you can start to implement into your training, into your prehab, your warm-up, into your training itself that will help correct this problem going forward and hopefully get you stronger underneath the bar, more injury resilient, and just feeling better. So let's jump right into this. All right, guys. So a couple things when it comes to Buttwink. One of the biggest factors that leads to Buttwink is an overall misunderstanding of what the squat should be feeling like, what the squat should be trying to entail when it comes to the sensations in your body. And not only that, the squat has a lot to do with the mobility and the stability of all the joints of the body. It's a full body movement, and if you're not using your whole body, then you're just not getting as much out of it as you possibly can. That being said, if you're a coach, if you're a trainer, if you're working with somebody that has a terrible amount of Buttwink and you think it's going to be a problem, and you want to just get through the training session, if you just want to get through that one workout, and you don't have a ton of time with somebody, here are two things that you can do to work on that Buttwink in the very short term to help benefit that client or yourself get more out of that squat. First one, grab yourself an elevated platform. Luckily enough, here at elitefts, we have prime wedges. They come in different heights, and I have found that this one, I'm not entirely sure which height, we'll have it down below, works the best with most people most of the time. You'll see a tremendous amount of, with a lot of people, you'll see a lot of people think the higher up you raise your heels, the more benefit you're gonna have for your squat. I don't think that's the best deal, or I don't think that's the best case when it comes to squatting. What we wanna do is just take any sort of ankle immobility or a lack of ankle mobility out of the squat, allow those femurs, allow those knees to travel forward, and allow that pelvis to kind of sit down in a straight up and down fashion. So in a normal squat, what you'll see is, because I'm super tight here, I'm probably gonna pull a muscle, this would be sick, get tons of views, is as I come down into that squat, you'll see my pelvis kind of start to tuck underneath, and I kind of feel it already. My ankles are tight, I felt that in my calves. I wasn't able to allow my knees to travel forward anymore in that squat, and I could feel that tension behind my calves. That's a key point. If you ask somebody to squat and you see Buttwink and they're like, oh, my calves are tight, that's kind of a key factor when it comes to determining what's kind of causing it. So very simple. Raise up those heels. You can do this with the prime wedges. You can do this with little plates. You can do this with pieces of wood. You can do this with small animals. I really don't care what you use, as long as you elevate your heels and we get into this position. So the idea is simple. If we elevate the heel, it's giving us a fake range of motion that we don't have, thus allowing us to let those knees travel forward, therefore also allowing that pelvis to stay in a good position and not have that tailbone tuck underneath. So from here, if I'm thinking about those cues, dropping the knees, as you can see, I'm in a much deeper squat position, a whole heck of a lot less butt wink. At the end of the day, we really want to focus in on that lumbar spine. If we flex it under load, Dr. Stuart McGill has been noted on saying this, if you flex something under load long enough, it has a greater potential to being broken or hurting or just having an injury. If this is something that we can correct with a very simple heel elevation, if you're working with general population clients or you're just somebody that wants to get stronger and you don't have to worry about competition, this is a great way to go about that. The second quick fix that we have for butt wink is up right over here. It would not be an Elite FTS squatting video if a box squat was not involved. So I think boxes get kind of bad raps when it comes to teaching people how to squat. A lot of people think it's like, oh, I don't train multiply, I don't squat really, really wide. Doesn't matter. If I'm working with somebody who wants to squat and they want to get stronger, but they have a tremendous amount of butt wink that's keeping them from maintaining good positions, I will pick a box that's just above that height where that tailbone starts to kind of round underneath, right? So for example, if this was the proper height where my tailbone starts to tuck underneath, due to whatever reason that may be, and we'll go into some of those reasons later on, I would set the box up here and I would have my client do everything like they would with a normal squat. And the box is now putting me in a position where I can keep building that strength, keep building that ability to maintain that good position without getting into that poor lumbar flex position of butt wink, right? So again, if you're working with somebody that needs this, I would start them at a box about this high or whatever height that you deem appropriate for them or yourself, and start taking that box lower and lower and lower as the week goes on. And what you'll find is you'll get stronger and stronger as time goes on. So guys, those are the quick fixes, but this would not be an Elite FTS educational video without us telling you what you really need to focus in on your training, on your prehab, on your warm-ups, everything you need to do to help fix that butt wink. Let's get right into it. All right, guys, so we went over the quick fixes of butt wink, but now let's kind of dig deeper into this and try to get a better understanding of what's going on. So in butt wink, what's happening, and it kind of varies from person to person, the real cause of it, but what we're focusing in on is the pelvis. As we squat, what happens is for some people, as we get deeper and deeper and deeper, that pelvis and that femur actually run into each other. That femur runs out of room to travel, and now that movement is coming from that pelvis, and now you see that pelvis rocking underneath. What that does, it puts a tremendous amount of force into the lumbar spine, the lower spine that you have on your body. And what we do is when we flex it under load, under increasingly heavier loads, we have a higher potential for injury, disc herniations, bulges, all that sort of stuff. Again, this isn't designed to scare you. This is designed to educate you on that's something that could potentially happen. At the worst case scenario, there's an injury. At the best case scenario, it's just a power leak that is costing you more weight on the bar and progress in your training. So either way, we kind of want to nip this in the bud. So just like with anything else that you'll see me kind of explain when it comes to training or any sort of this educational material, it's never really just here that we need to focus in on. The body works as a unit. It works as a system. We need to look at that thing from the top to the bottom, the left to the right, and the bottom up, right? So when it comes to squatting, making sure that we have the proper form should be first and foremost. If you're a newer powerlifter, or if you're new around here, I did a video on bracing, understanding what that means to stack your rib cage and your pelvis. What we can do is we can tag that video above here, and you can watch it. It's a little bit more in depth than what I'm going to say now if you have any more questions on it. But the key is when we're working with somebody, we need to teach them how to brace. If we are stable between here and here, which is our torso, which is our core, that means the movement that we're trying to do is going to be more locked in, and we're able to get more force and more athleticism out of the joints of our legs and our upper body as well. So I would say that's step number one, understanding a brace, understanding how to get into that position to stack that rib cage and that pelvis, lock that in, fill it with air, just like I go over in that video. So that would be step one for me, making sure that someone actually understands what they're doing underneath the bar. Because what happens is if we're not stable here, that pelvis can rock because it's not being stabilized by that core musculature. Pretty easy, pretty straightforward. The second thing is something that not a lot of people will focus in on when it comes to Buttwink, because with that, we're always focused on the lower body. But what I'm gonna do is I wanna show you something that involves your upper body that can actually have a positive impact on your Buttwink. So let's go over to the cable stack. The second avenue in which I would look at someone suffering from Buttwink or has Buttwink in their squat and they want to fix it is actually in their upper body. First and foremost, you have to determine what sort of squat style you're going to do, whether it's high bar or low bar, and you need to have the prerequisite upper body mobility and stability to hold that bar in the right position. So what do I mean by that? One of the biggest components of Buttwink that I've seen even training people here at the Trainer Ass Off is they don't have the proper thoracic extension, right? Their thoracic spine has no ability to extend because they're kind of stuck in this position. What that also shows me is that they're stuck in this internally rotated position, right? So if we know our brace is coming from our rib cage and our pelvis and the ability for them to stack, if I'm stuck here and then I have to put a bar on my back and jack myself up into this position, what happens? Rib cage flares up, pelvis drops back, and there is no stability in that torso, thus potentially causing Buttwink at the bottom of a squat due to a lack of mobility and stability in the upper body. So this is one of my favorite drills to kind of work on that. A test you can do at home, simply stand, and actually Danny LaMartina taught me this and showed me this in the video that we can tag above here. You want to start with those palms kind of facing up, and you want to raise that hand. Let's start with one side at a time and kind of raise it until you start to feel any sort of tension or binding. And you want to notice when that elbow starts to kind of rotate out a little bit. So if I'm left to my own device and I have to get my hand up overhead, I'm going to be here and there. You notice how that elbow starts to raise up? That means when I'm in this position here, which is a much harder position to get in than to here, I don't have that mobility, I don't have that positioning. So what we need to do is a couple of things we can do. Again, I have a video breaking this down further for the bench press, but for squat, it's just as important. We want to focus in on getting those muscles on the back side of our body, our rotator cuffs. We want to get those lats firing, and it pulls everything kind of down and back, right? So very simple exercise. Grab yourself a cable stack, cable machine. You can also do this with a band. What you want to do, oh, that's a little heavier than I thought it would be. Perfect, that's fine. So what you want to do is allow that shoulder blade to roll forward. What we're doing is we're expanding that rib cage backwards onto that shoulder blade. What that does, if we can get that air up to that upper back, that rib cage expands, provides a better position for that shoulder blade to sit on. Therefore, that shoulder blade will have an easier time moving. Thus, you're able to get that bar into a better position on your back. So what I'll do here is I'll take a step out, allow this to kind of pull, keeping that rib cage and that pelvis kind of stacked on each other. I want to take a big deep breath, trying to fill the spot between my shoulder blades. You'll actually feel this start to stretch out a little bit, right? Big deep breath here. You can do a few of those. And what I'll do is now I'll incorporate a breathing into a rep. So I'm going to rotate that hand out. You're going to start to feel everything stretch out a little bit more. Big breath, fill that upper back. Drive that elbow down, slight rotation to the side, getting that lat activated. It's already on, we just want to bring awareness to it. Big deep breath, elbow to the hip, squeeze. Keeping that hand as neutral as you can. Big deep breath. Ooh. So as you can see, just a few reps, just a few big deep breaths. And if we notice on this side, I can maintain that position much better. without that rib cage flaring. So that's number 2. Take a look at that on yourself or your clients, and let's move on to number 3. All right, guys, we talked about the brace, we talked about the upper body. Now let's focus in around the hips. So with the hips, when we're talking about butt wink, a lot of issue comes when we lack the ability to internally rotate, and as I just cramp up on my hip, this will be great, internally rotate through our hips, and that showcases itself with our pelvis's inability to maintain that position throughout because our adductors are super tight, our hips are super tight, and we can't maintain a good position at the bottom of a squat. So what we need to do is we need to open up our hips in all ranges of motion. So we want to mobilize and then stabilize. I've talked about this many times. I've showed this many times. I did a video with Joey talking about this on his deadlift. But the main fact is we need to make sure our hips can move in the appropriate ranges of motion they need to move, as well as resist force in those ranges of motion as well. So we can bring that over to the squat and maintain good positions throughout the whole movement. So the first things first, when we're talking about a squat, we need to make sure that we can get into adequate hip extension. A lot of times we're super, super tight through the hip flexors and unable to get the glutes involved in the party. So what we want to do, kind of open these bad babies up first and foremost and get a little movement to the area. So I start with a very simple couch stretch. So if you want to come on over here. And this is something I find that I have to do the more time I spend seated. I said that weird. I just had a little baby stroke again. Seated. So if I'm working all day and then I go to train, this is something I do to kind of help open everything up. Find yourself a bench, find yourself a couch. That's what it was called, a couch stretch. You can do this on the couch. Get something on the knee. And what you want to do is you want to focus in on not getting here. We don't want to hyperextend. We want to keep, again, rib cage stacked on top of pelvis. Try to squeeze that glute through. If you're really, really tight like me, you're going to notice you're actually feeling a stretch down in the quad. What you want to do is kind of hang out in this position until it starts to kind of travel up and you actually feel it in your hip flexors. This is something very, very common. A lot of times we're super tight in the hip flexors. We don't get enough glute, I would say, emphasis in a lot of our movements. We don't feel movements where we should, and this is one of the biggest components of that. So we want to hang out here 1 or 2 sets, maybe 3. Hang out here for, I do it by breaths, because again, we're just trying to make it as efficient as we possibly can. You don't have to worry about staring at a phone all the time. 5 to 8 big breaths, kind of focusing in on letting your body relax, and then we'll pop right out. So that's hip extension. So now we want to work on external rotation, right? Granted, the majority of people are always standing here like this. We still kind of want to open up these ranges and make sure our hips can kind of move adequately so that we can squat well. I do that, very basic, pigeon stretch. Keeping that leg, oh baby. Keeping that leg at 90 and trying to kind of keep that pelvis stacked over. What you'll want to see, a lot of people flare out here. You'll see this a lot if you're really, really not super mobile. But you want to kind of keep that to 90 and eventually try to bring your hips down to the floor. As you can see, not doing a great job of this, but it's one of those things that once you do it a few times, your body starts to kind of loosen up here a little bit. Same thing, kind of relax into it, trying to keep that rotation over that hip. Hang out here, it's miserable. It's really not that fun. Same thing, 2 or 3 sets, 8 to 10 breaths, kind of hang out there, pop right out, do that for both sides. Now the last thing we want to do, work on that internal rotation. This one is probably going to make me cry, and if you're watching this, you're one of my internet friends, that's what you really came here to see. So we're going to do a frog stretch. This is something that works on the internal rotation, our ability to get into this position here. So getting onto all fours, knees outside of hips, feet outside of knees. Holy dog shit. It feels great. So what you want to do is you want to keep, we don't want to be here, right? We want to tuck that pelvis into neutral, stack it on the rib cage like we would on a squat, and then push the hips back till you find about a 6 or a 7 out of 10. Hang out there for a while. If you're fancy, you can do all sorts of shit with your foot. You can do PNF stretches with that, whatever you want to do. But you just want to hang out here in these ranges and breathe. So we mobilize the hips. Now we need to stabilize the hips, right? You saw me do this with Joey. You've seen me do this in a bunch of different other videos. I like to incorporate a hip airplane to get everything kind of moving and grooving as it should, to help stabilize those hips into various positions. So if you're new at this, you need to hold on to something, right? But if you're a pro like me, just kidding, I'm gonna hold on to something. What you need to do is you wanna focus in on keeping a hinge through the hips, right? So we wanna keep hips facing forward, hinge through that hip, holding that end range position. You should already start to feel that glute kind of fire. And now what you're gonna do, imagine your pelvis is like a book. Right here, what you wanna do is not allowing this knee to cave in. So we don't wanna see this. We wanna see an active foot grabbing the ground. And what I wanna see is that hip open up. You're gonna start to feel that glute med, or the top of your butt cheek, kind of start firing up a little bit, pressing that into the foot into the ground, holding for about 10 seconds. And now we're gonna close the book. Pelvis just rotating to the side. Again, as far as we can go without letting that knee come off of that ankle, and you'll start to feel the top of that hip. Top of that hip, that glute med kind of stretching out. You'll feel your adductors, you feel everything kind of rocking and rolling. The reason we do that glute med helps with lateral stability of the hip. A lot of the times, again, the glutes aren't doing what they're supposed to be doing, and therefore that pelvis can't stabilize and it just dips underneath. Whew, feeling good, feeling juicy, in the words of the late great Alex, who used to do these videos with me. So guys, that's pretty much what I would do for the long term. Another thing you could do, super simple, stretch your calves. If your calves are the issue, if your ankles are the issue, start stretching your calves out, right? Go on a surface, stretch those bad babies out, do direct calf work. So don't just stretch your calves, actually get some calf work in, work the gastroc, work the soleus, do all the things. Very simple, but the idea is, regardless if you do the short term or the long term, if you don't do something about it, it's not gonna be fixed, right? Work on your form, work on your bracing, work on the mobility and the stability of your upper body, of your lower body, open up those ankles, practice more, right? Understand the cues of what you're trying to feel, what you're trying to do. And guys, that's it, man. That's it, it's easy, right? Super simple, super easy. Just do the work and you'll get better. So on behalf of myself, Jacob behind the camera, thank you very much for watching this video, and we will see you in the next one.